Hello and welcome to the RinggitPlus show, the show where we talk about all things personal finance. My name is Pang, and with me we have Hann, co-founder director of RinggitPlus. In this episode, we're going to talk about a very hot topic, which is a proposal of whether we should have another automatic loan moratorium in Malaysia. Now, we've seen a lot of chatter from politicians, as well as on social media, calling for another round of moratoriums because this is what Malaysians are struggling, and we really need this, right? But I want to explore this on two fronts, and Hann's going to help me with this. Is another automatic moratorium good for borrowers? And secondly, is it good for the economy? As of October 2020, this is the latest stats that we have, 650,000 applications so far, and approval rate has been in the 98% range. So it actually means almost everyone who needs this assistance and have come forward to apply for it have received it, right? And it's also important, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we've come across, especially for me, and I'm not really sure why a lot of my friends think this, they think that since the end of the moratorium, there was nothing else for them. Like, it was very difficult to find any kind of assistance. But one misconception is this, and the truth is actually there's actually no set timeline for this program. In fact, a lot of banks have come across and said that you can apply for this anytime between now until the middle of next year, at least, right? Tentatively, they're saying that. But so in this case, like, I really want to make this point across. Like, Hann, we have this targeted repayment assistance program, right? If you look at it from an economic point of view, is this something that will benefit another loan moratorium when we already have this targeted version right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Pang. Hello, everyone. I think to put things in the context, Pang, I think we can look back at the initial automatic loan moratorium, right? What the impact that was of that was, right? And I think some of the stats that came out was from the Ministry of Finance was that in that 6-month period from April to September, during the automatic loan moratorium, about 100 billion ringgit, which should have ended up in being repaid back to banks, did not. It remained in kind of rakyats and SME hands.
Right.
And this is huge, right? Because if you think about what our kind of GDP is in the kind of 1.3 billion ringgit, 1.4 billion ringgit range, right? That's about 6 to 7% of GDP, right? Which is huge, right? You think about the context, right? Which is out of everything that the country does, 6 to 7% of that money is in our hands and in SME hands during that time. Huge value, and it was important, right? And you think about why it was important, right? Because in March, if you remember, not many people knew what this virus was, what it could do, how dangerous it was. All we knew was we saw other countries shutting down, and we needed to do so too. But shutting down has a cost, right? And the cost was to our economy. It really damaged our economy. And this was a really interesting. You mentioned unprecedented. That's a good point, right? Never been done before. That's
actually, the funny thing was that one cool stat that we found was actually that Malaysia is the only country in the world to have introduced an automatic loan moratorium for all loans across all the banks in Malaysia. So the closest one, I think, was in India, where there were a few banks that offered an automatic moratorium.
Yeah, so
that was pretty much it.
Not just unprecedented, right? We acted almost alone globally for this. And I think, look, most people found it to be very helpful, right? Because at a time when no one could go to work, no businesses could open, well, except the essential ones. This kind of reprieve or this kind of assistance was really, really helpful. We're obviously in a different situation today, right? Slightly, right? We're not quite locked down, and since October, most people have started repaying back. I think the latest stats from both Bank Negara as well as Ministry of Finance has been like about 5 out of 6 people have started repaying. So 85% of borrowers have started repaying their installment payments. So people are able to do it. 1/6 of them aren't able to. So that's why I think they came up with, in discussions with the banks, Bank Negara came up with this program called I think it was, you mentioned Targeted Repayment Assistance Program, TRAP. Probably not the best acronym, but essentially it's to help the people that still need help, so that 15% and maybe a little bit more depending on how things go over time, right? And what this assistance program is to sustain those exact same people that having issues right during that time. And I think it's really important to think about when you think about the economic context, the macroeconomic context, right? Which is if you're going to give people automatic moratoriums, you're essentially removing liquidity. Sorry, big word. Liquidity from the banking system, and this has very, very bad consequences, right? The first is that imagine that 100 billion ringgit that we should have paid back in installments that we didn't, could have been used to make loans to other people, other businesses, other people looking to buy houses, buy cars, right? And buy equipment for their businesses. And if they can't do that, then economic activity gets impacted. So that's the kind of impact that a blanket automatic loan moratorium has on the economy. Very, very dangerous, and it really saps out a lot of the capability, and it saps out a lot of the loanability of the banking system. So that's the kind of economic impact. And the second big economic impact that nobody really kind of thinks about or sees is this thing called household debt to GDP. Some of you may have heard that term before. Pang, you've heard that term before, which is
how much, from what I understand, it is how much of our income is being used to service our debt. So our loans, or credit cards, all kinds of commitments, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So why is this important, right? Like, I think we have one of the higher household debt to GDP ratios in the region, right? It used to be at 83%. Pre-moratorium, pre-COVID, right? And I think most economists are seeing this projecting this to go up to close to 90%, which is even higher than it has ever been. And it sounds like a big economic indicator, yes, but actually it really impacts households, right? The name household debt gives it away, which is if our household debt is 90% of GDP, that means a bigger and bigger portion of our income or earnings is being used to service debt, rather than spend or save. And that has, again, big consequences, negative ones, on our economy. So a couple of key points there.
Right. And so I just want to go back a little bit about this one, right? So considering that we're the only country in the world that was able to do this, like, why were we able to do this in the first place? I think that was one of the interesting things, right? Like one of the key things to be proud of, and some people have said, is that our banking system is one of the most resilient, that not many people know this, right?
Yeah. I think you mentioned quite an interesting point, right? Why were we one of the only countries globally to be doing this? I think two things. Our banking system is very resilient. They use that word, but it basically means very strong, very well capitalized. And we learned this from the past two crises, so the Asian financial crisis 97-98, as well as the global financial crisis 2008-2009. And learning from those two crises, we really spent a lot of time making sure those banks were regulated well and capitalized very strongly. And essentially, that gave us a big bullet to use.
Yeah, correct.
During COVID, and we've used that bullet now, right? So the stats will come out towards the end of the year, but all our banks have had a hit to their resiliency ratios. So things like how much money they have against how much they're borrowing, what their profitability is versus how much loans they have outstanding. Those kind of financial metrics are definitely going to be lower this year. Essentially, we built up strong banks to be able to use this bullet, which we used to benefit households and businesses. And now we've got to think of other ways that we can move on given that we've already used that bullet, essentially.
Right. I want to get back to this one in a bit, in terms of what kind of impact that we can expect or could happen if we were to have another loan moratorium down the line. But in this case, when we're looking at from an economic point of view, but one of the biggest claims was from these politicians and on social media was that another automatic or blanket, in the sense, right, loan moratorium will be beneficial for everyone, right? This is what we need, so to say. There are some long-term impacts. I think you're mentioning from the economic point of view. Wouldn't this be also good for the rakyat at this point? I'm thinking from a consumer point of view. Wouldn't a pause on our loans will be beneficial now? Does it make sense?
That's a really good question, Pang. I think most people felt the benefit, the short-term benefit of having that automatic blanket loan moratorium in April to September. We felt that benefit in that we suddenly didn't have to pay our installments back, we had extra cash in our pockets. But what we maybe failed to realize at the time, and we're starting to realize this now as rakyats, as households, as small businesses, is that those installments start stacking up. And at the end of September, early October, they were turned into little term loans locked onto the existing loans that we had. A bit technical, but essentially it was yourself starting to build more debt than you had before versus starting to pay down your debt. So you're starting to see where this is starting to impact us later on already after 6 months. Imagine how it would be for somebody with a home loan with 20 or 25 years remaining, having this extra loan on top of that, accruing interest over time, because that's just how loans work. Loans accrue interest over time. So short-term cash flow reprieve, we all felt the benefit, and we're starting to feel the kind of counter benefit or the negative impact of having our loans being put under this moratorium by not being able to pay it down. That loan amount is starting to grow, and we're going to have to pay interest on that loan amount. So that's a key kind of negative impact of just having a moratorium put onto you versus you saying you need it and applying for it.
Right. So in essence, like even if you don't want it, it's more convenient to just take it, and then you don't realize that this thing actually accrues interest over time, and you're like, oh wow, this is bad. Right?
It is highly negative to have increased indebtedness, especially if the reason for that is that you didn't bother to not take the automatic moratorium, or you didn't bother to opt out of it. So for me, we've got to look after ourselves, right? Which is, and I'm not saying the government shouldn't look after us. I'm saying if you're financially going to look after yourself, you've got to be very aware of the impact of a loan moratorium has on your finances, not just in kind of the 3 to 6 month period, but over the long term, as your debt pile starts growing and not being paid back. And everybody knows that doesn't sound like a good thing to do.
Yeah. So if that's the case, right? Like if interest is the only major kind of impact that you will face, or you and I will face as a consumer, with another automatic moratorium, why not make it interest free? So this is I'm not making this up, this is one of the things that people are saying, that make it an interest-free loan moratorium. And the supporting argument was that banks make billions of ringgit every year in profit, right? Pure profit every year. Surely they can afford something like this.
No, I've heard I've heard those statements too, and I think it's a very interesting concept. I think if you go back to what banks are commercial entities. They exist to make profits. Now, if they do not make any profits on the services they provide, they will stop providing those services. So here's an example. If you're selling, say, for example, you're a nasi lemak seller, and you start selling your nasi lemak below cost, are you going to continue that over time? If you're a business, you're unlikely to. So if we extend that to kind of a bigger thinking around what banks do, right? They lend money, they earn interest, they take deposits, they give out interest, and that difference is the profit they make. If loans are interest-free and banks can no longer profit from making these loans out to households and businesses, I can be pretty sure, and most people can guess what's going to happen next, right? Which is banks are going to stop doing that, right? Because they exist as commercial entities, businesses which are built to make money, and if they no longer make money from giving out a loan, they're going to stop giving out loans. And what does that mean, right? That means, that means impact to us, the rakyat, right? The people, right? Who, if I or you want to get a home loan, we might not be able to, if a bank can't make money on that loan, so we don't have access to that service. We can't get a car loan because banks will stop offering that service if they don't make money on it. So I think it's a dangerous moral hazard to say banks should give an interest-free loan, right? Because then if they can't make money on it, they will stop offering it, because ultimately they're commercial entities.
Last thing, I know one of the things that many people also don't really think of is how the banks are generally financing what they call the new economy, the post-COVID economy, right? Like you point out a little bit just now about how people will not be able to get new loans to buy new cars and houses, but what about businesses, right? Or even now more people are doing home-run businesses or micro SMEs, right? Like this is what could happen as well, right? The banks cannot finance this group.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Pang, absolutely. Because when I said banks won't offer new loans, as in I mean lending in general, not just just for buying houses or cars. But if a bank can no longer make profits and does not have the cash flow to issue loans for growth of businesses, that impacts the economy and GDP numbers get impacted. But if you look down to the individual business person or individual SME owner, right, that loan could have been used to fund digitalization efforts. It could have been used to buy equipment to make more products, which if that loan was not there, right, that's a direct impact to that small business owner, which is something that we want to try and avoid as we assist the people who need assistance the most right now.
Right. So that kind of just brings me back to that point, right? Really, the huge cause and effect that has that chain of events that we can look and if you just kind of take one step back and look just look what happens down the line, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's not saying that we shouldn't worry about the people that can't repay back their loans today because of the pandemic, MCOs, and I'm not saying none of them should get any help and no one should get a moratorium. That's totally not what I'm saying. I'm saying the people that can continue should continue. The people that can't should get help.
All right. So earlier we talked about the loan moratorium and its potential ramifications and why we needed it before and why we, after this discussion, we found that it may not really be what we need now, right? But what do we have now actually? So we have the targeted repayment assistance, as we've talked about quite a bit. But we also know that from 23rd of November, there's going to be some enhancement to this program, right? So Han, do you want to run me through this?
Okay, and I think when people out there ask for an automatic blanket loan moratorium, what they may not be aware of is that Bank Negara already has started discussing with banks way before the initial moratorium ended about some sort of continuation of a more targeted program. They're calling it the Targeted Repayment Assistance program, and I think it's a really interesting one which they launched, I think, early October.
From October onwards.
Itself, which was very targeted to the people that needed it the most. So that, you remember earlier we talked about that 15% of people who struggled to start repayments on their installments. So the program initially was whoever who had loss of job, so retrenchment, or could demonstrate reduced income. So maybe you got a salary cut, or you run a small business whose revenue is dropped by 30% or more.
Yeah.
Right? You could request either for extension of the moratorium. So if you had lost your job, you got an extension of the moratorium, right, for at least 3 months. And if you could demonstrate reduction of income, you have gotten a corresponding reduction in your installment amount restructured across your loan. So, horses for courses, as it were, or very targeted towards a specific issue, right? I think the new enhanced targeted repayment assistance program now being put forward is from 23rd of November, I think it was.
23rd of November. So this is technically not, unlike other budget announcements, this is starting as early as now.
Yeah, essentially now. And the enhancements are the following, right? Which is anyone in the B40 segment is now eligible. You don't have to show loss of income or loss of employment. They've done this because they've realized that the B40 group are the most vulnerable as a result of the pandemic and the various lockdowns and MCOs that are in place. So that's a positive development.
So everyone in the BSH recipient list will be eligible for this one.
And how they're defining the B40 group is anyone who's receiving Bantuan Sara Hidup or Bantuan Prihatin Rakyat, all the Bs basically. And additionally, for people who aren't in that group, so it's not just for B40s only, for people who aren't in that group, who can still show a reduction in income. So even if you're in an M40 group or T20 group household, if you can show that your household income has reduced as a result of what's happened in the last kind of 9 months, you can still get it, right? And and what they've done is say, hey, look, we're going to make it even easier. The myth around requiring lots and lots of documents and it's going to take a long time. I think what they've committed to is a multi-channel process, meaning you can either go online, which is likely to be the easiest for most people. Or you can go to the branch or call in the call center. So there's lots of ways for you to actually access this. You can do a self-declaration now, so you don't have to prepare all kinds of documents. All you have got to do is to go online and fill up that form and say, hey, look, my household or small business has shown reduced income.
Right.
And the last thing they upgraded it by, other than including B40s, making the process more streamlined and quicker. So you should get an answer within days, right? Regardless of whether you're a B40 person, M40, or a small business. The last is that small business loans are also included within this kind of easy, no need to prove anything.
Right.
If you're a small business which has less than 150,000 loan principal, you are considered. You will be considered for this program, regardless of whether you've been able to demonstrate loss of income or loss of sales. So as long as you're a micro SME who has 150,000 loan principal or less, you're included. So many more people included now. So it's not just for the B40, and it's not that nobody's getting help without a blanket automatic moratorium. People are getting help, and what we're seeing is the people who are in the need of getting help are getting help. And the second one around is too difficult, too many forms. We're an SME ourselves. We've seen those forms, those online forms. They're quite easy to fill up. You just go and fill up various things. You press submit, and a bank will get back to you within a few days, right? I think that makes things a lot easier, right? You can wait a few days. What we don't want to have is people waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking at the latest announcement, and what they're saying is that the processing times are now expected to be anywhere between 24 hours for the B40s and the micro enterprises, all the way up to 14 days maximum for SMEs, right? But we're now still in MCO. We're now in EMCO and CMCOs, right? Like, we can still do this, right? Like, can we just call the banks, I know that they are, the banks still have some form of online drop your emails or drop your contact number, and they'll contact you to be able to do this, right? So again, like, if your area is still under CMCO, which part of most of Malaysia is, we can still apply for this.
Yeah.
Right?
I think part of the rules around CMCO is that if you need to do essential services such as banking, and this very much is covered in that essential service. I need to do some banking, and these are crucial things, right? You will be allowed to go to a bank branch. Try and go to one within your area, obviously. Try not to cross state lines just to go to a bank. And hopefully your local bank branch doesn't require you to cross state lines. But if you can't do that, you can phone them, you can email them, you can sign in for the online web form.
So the banks come to you, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. The banks are where you are, like in your smartphone, in your laptop, in your home computer, or even on SMS if you don't have a smartphone. So I think it's just because it's EMCO or CMCO in your area doesn't mean that these services are not available to you.
Right.
So I guess that's hopefully going to help
overall.
the people.
That's overall positive development all around, right? Like, I mean, it sounds like the banking industry as a whole and Bank Negara is aware of some of the limitations of the current program, and they're fixing it as early as now. Like, they're not waiting for next year's budget, or they're not waiting for any kind of additional developments, and it's making sure that everyone is eligible, or people who need it will get it, and will get it fast, right? There's very little processing times from what they're promising. And funny thing here is what I'm seeing is that Bank Negara is actually saying that if your bank is not fast enough, or you have some problems and you're not happy with it, you contact their telelink, BNM telelink, to lodge that complaint. And they're pretty serious about this, from what I've heard. A lot of banks are actually afraid of this call.
I would be too, right? Like, I think, look, we as consumers, as the rakyat, as households, we have certain rights. If banks commit to things, we've got to hold them to that commitment. So if you're feeling some issues, please go call BNM telelink directly, or let us know, and maybe we can try and help and see how you can get through that process a lot quicker. So that's hopefully how we can help at RinggitPlus.
Right. Okay. So I think we've covered quite a bit with regards to all of There's conversations around loan moratorium or what some politicians call bantuan secara pukal, all these other things that seem to be misconceptions surrounding this assistance program, right? It sounds like that's what we have now, and even the enhanced version of this repayment program seems to be answering a lot of what the critics are saying, commenting about this program, and making it more accessible and covering more Malaysians, right? So does that still, let's just conclusively prove this, do we actually still need a huge moratorium as what we had, or as what we enjoyed basically in the last round? Okay, but Han, I have some questions still. This program sounds like it's going to cover a lot of people, and it's going to be really helpful for, and processing is now a lot simpler. But is there anything else that I need to look out for? I know some people are also talking about, secret records at credit health, whether it's going to impact it or not. Again, I think this sounds like a misconception, but is there anything that we should know?
Yeah, I think so. I think, thanks for the question. I think, Pang, it's a very important question to note because a lot of people still don't really know how these things work. So hopefully we can help. And if you're in the segment looking to apply for this targeted repayment assistance program, right, there are a couple of things to note, right? The first is you're likely to get it if you're in an affected group, right? So that 98% approval rate keeps coming back at us. And I guess we have to accept that most people will get it. But keep in mind that it might not be enough for you, and if it isn't, it's okay, right? There's still other means that you can use to help. So for example, if you apply for something, you get it, and it's still not quite enough for you, maybe your income is further deteriorated, or you still haven't been able to find a new job, right? And you need either further moratorium or further reduction in installment, you can still talk to your bank, right, to get it done. And if once they've done as much as they can for you, you still cannot manage, there's still the AKPK, the Debt Counselling Agency, the government debt counselling agency, which can help. Mind you, they will look at it in a more holistic way and try to restructure your entire credit profile rather than just a specific loan. But there is help out there for you. And for the people who want to apply for this TRA, Targeted Repayment Assistance Program, just keep in mind that till June 2021, whatever that you apply for and get won't be reflected in your secrets record. So essentially what it means is you won't get a mark that says you haven't been able to repay. It just means that your secrets record will remain as it is pre-moratorium, pre-assistance program. Right. So there's no kind of impact to your secrets record if you get approved for the TRA.
Right, and this is important to know, right? Because any kind of normal circumstance, restructuring of your debts or moratorium, it will affect your chances, and most of the time it's a negative effect, right? In terms of getting your new loans or new loan applications or any kind of financing product to be approved, right?
Yeah. So just remember, Targeted Repayment Assistance Program, no impact to your secrets. If you're struggling, even after you get assistance, you go to AKPK, there's help there for you. So just those two things to remember.
Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit with regards to all of these conversations around loan moratorium or what some politicians call bantuan secara pukal, all these other things that seem to be misconceptions surrounding this assistance program, right? It sounds like that's what we have now, and even the enhanced version of this repayment program seems to be answering a lot of what the critics are saying, commenting about this program, and making it more accessible and covering more Malaysians, right? So does that still, let's just conclusively prove this, do we actually still need a huge moratorium as what we had, or as what we enjoyed basically in the last round?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think this will go back and forth for a while, but hopefully we can go somewhere to explaining to everyone what the situation is without any specific agenda, because we have no specific horse in the game. But whoever that needs help as a result of the pandemic, lockdowns, that they cannot continue repaying their loans, should get help, right? Right. And I think most people are covered, right? You've got the B40s, doesn't matter whether you've lost your income job or not. All B40s within the BSH, BPR segments are covered. If you're kind of not in the B40, you're an M40, a T20 household, you're still covered if you can demonstrate loss of income or loss of
And it's a
employment.
self-declaration, right? So
Yep.
if you really want to, you can actually
Just apply
if you
for
want
it.
to.
You will also be eligible. So it looks like many people are covered, but I personally don't think everyone should be covered, especially the people that are looking to be debt-free,
Right.
are looking to reduce their debt over time. Automatic moratorium forced onto them doesn't help them very much if that's what they're looking to do,
Yeah.
right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of...
Which is actually a very good point, right? Like in that sense, like what the system is now, or the program is now, is that it's giving you the choice and it's making it more flexible for you, even if, for example, you foresee that you can service your loans now, but you're not really sure down the line what's going to happen, right? So they're giving you enough timeline, enough of a runway to assess for yourself, and if you need to, you can apply for it. And it's not kind of shoved down to you and just say, here, take it, but there's going to be interest down the line, right? So the key message is really assessing your options right now. If, for example, if like, you know, I may not have an issue today, but you know, 6 months down the line, nobody really knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows how long this recovery mode is it's going to take. And it's just knowing that help is available, and it's available for everyone who needs it, right? So I think before we go, we're just going to share one last round. Like if you are facing any problems with your banks, for example, in terms of like your applications or being rejected or any kind of things, Bank Negara has actually kind of pointed out that you either reach out to your banks for additional clarifications or contact BNM Telelink at 1300 88 5465 or lodge a complaint straight to the Bank Negara website at bnm.my/R survey, right? Repayment Assistance Survey. I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.